Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new show from us, the Ghoul Guides. This is Ghoul Guides Association. So this is our brand new monthly show. So this will be coming out once a month, as the word monthly implies. And Mary and I will be using this as an opportunity to do something a little bit less formal, shall we say? Mary, do you want to say a little bit more about why we are deciding to do this?
So one of the main ideas that we wanted to set up Ghoul Guides was because we just like talking about the Gothic and we want to share the Gothic. But obviously part of that is there's not just me and Lauren. And we want to engage the rest of the Gothic community and also platform and showcase and talk about all of the amazing research that's going on in Gothic studies and in the wider Gothic community, I guess in academia, but also beyond academia, as well as, showcasing some of the new up and coming things in Gothic that are kind of coming out. So we're hoping this can be a way that we can reach out to and engage with, and also just showcase some of the amazing Gothicists that are out there. And there are so many people doing such wonderful work. And we thought this would be a nice informal way to kind of showcase that amazing work, but also have a nice little chat as well.
Yeah, like the last 18 months now has meant there's no conferences, there's no networking events, but we're really fortunate to be part of a really diverse and vibrant and global discipline. So what we hope with Ghoul Guides Association is that this will be a show where we can talk to academics, creators, artists, people from all disciplines, all modes and methods of research and creation, and we can talk about our favorite thing to talk about, which is the Gothic. So the format of this show will be that each month Mary and I will talk to each other about something that we've been enjoying. So there'll be a short review section where we'll have a bit of a chat about some of the new Gothic, I hesitate to say literature because it's going to be books, TV, film, video games. It's going to be, things we saw on Twitter. It might be a meme, I can't say for certain what kind of medium it will be, but it'll be some kind of medium that we've been enjoying or found interesting and that we want to share with you guys. There'll then be a short section where we talk to each other about the fact that the news is really freaking Gothic. Be it, the discovery of ancient sea life on mountains and hillsides in places like the Cotswolds, or the fact that, did you see the fact that the ocean was on fire? That's super Gothic. The world is very Gothic. And we'll be, bring a bit of Gothic perspective to current events. And then we will each episode be welcoming a special guest or guests to talk to us about their research or their creation or their profession. And then to have a little bit of fun, such as, a would you rather game, a kiss, marry, kill, who would you invite to dinner, something for, to kind of, well, not break the ice because you give me at the end of the show, but something fun, something enjoyable where we can kind of let loose a little bit. Also, you guys seem to really like Kiss, Marry, Kill, so we figured we'd stick with that. So for this very first inaugural meeting of the Ghoul Guides Association, we have doctors Kathleen Hudson and Dr. Hannah Moss. So Mary, do you want to say a little bit about why we wanted Hannah and Kathleen on our first show?
Absolutely. And full disclosure, Kathleen Hudson and Hannah Moss are two of our very, very, very dear friends.
Pure nepotism.
Pure nepotism. And so we've had this idea of this kind of show, an interview or discussion show, bringing in people since the inception of the Ghoul Guides. And we've always talked about having Kathleen and Hannah on in some way. Because nepotism, but also because their research is so good, and we wanted to be able to showcase their research. Which, watch the interview and find out what it is, because it is really great.
Yeah, I think that they are both really outstanding researchers, and I don't just say that because they're our best friends. If you've ever seen the Ghoul Guides out in the wild, then you probably have seen us with Kathleen and Hannah, because as part of, the International Gothic Association, we have been, all over the world. And yeah, their research is really fantastic. So why don't you check out the rest of the episode and find out exactly what it is? Okay, and welcome to our new, very exciting section. This is Interview with a Gothicist, and our first two Gothicists are our very dear friends, hence why we've bullied them into being on this first episode, Dr. Kathleen Hudson and Dr. Hannah Moss. Hello, you two.
Hello.
So we are going to ask you guys a few questions so people can get to know you, and this is your opportunity to shamelessly plug yourselves. So, Dr. Kathleen, the Goth Queen.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your research, please?
Okay, well, hello. My name is Dr. Kathleen Hudson, graduate of University of Sheffield with the other two. My PhD research was in servants and servant narratives in the early Gothic. So the Walpole to Shelley range of
era.
Yeah, that era of 1764 to roughly the 1830s. And yes, that was what my PhD research was on, and also what my first monograph was on, was instances of servants speaking and telling stories and, you know, performing stories in some cases, and that interesting line between telling a story and being stuck in a Gothic story, which is that line none of us particularly want to cross, I would think, in real life. Let's hope. But and yes, so servant narratives in the early Gothic. I have since graduating and since writing the first monograph expanded a little bit to address women's authorship and gender-based narratives. I do still do a lot in class narratives. I've come forward in time a little bit, and I was just working on an article about Lovecraft. And racially modified rereadings, essentially of Lovecraft in the new era, and just recently published an edited collection called Women's Authorship in the Early Gothic, for which I was the editor, with a lot of amazing essays and chapters in it about early Gothic and the women's identities as authors in particular, and how that really emerged as an almost a female community of authors, not necessarily consciously. Something we found was that that women authors were communicating with each other, not necessarily in letters, but through their novels, and were reacting to this idea of a female-based writing community, and included versions of that in their own texts. So that was a really interesting project. So that is out through University of Wales Press, and a shameless plug.
You can check out, if you want to check out either of Kathleen's publications, we will include links to them in the show description. So you can go and have a look at them for yourselves. They're really good.
They're amazing.
They are
so good.
To be fair. Like, I am entirely biased, but they are also just really good.
Yes.
Kathleen, why servants? So, you know, we always hear about Gothic heroes and Gothic heroines and Gothic villains, and, you know, servants are present in a lot of Gothic texts, but what is it specifically about servants in Gothic narratives that kind of makes them such an interesting research focus?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I first, I always say the reason why I initially started writing about servants was because they were very annoying to me personally. No, it was when I started studying Gothic literature and started reading these texts for the first time, the servant narratives were always a source of massive frustration for me. They were kind of like the descriptions of landscapes. When you're reading the books for the first time, all you really want to know is, does Emily St. Aubert escape Udolpho? Like, you're like skipping massive chunks of the book because you're like, get to the end. Or at least I was, but I'm probably a terrible reader in that way. But they kept popping up, and they kept giving this really important information that I would have to then sort of go back and be like, oh shoot, I missed that part, or oh, that was actually kind of important, and it was, and then I went back and I was like, actually, this is really interesting, this is really good. So I always say that because they annoyed me so much, that I went back to do it. But what it is you do very much become a bit of a Gothic heroine when you're forced to read servant narratives, because the heroines don't want this to drag on either. I was turning into Emily St. Aubert, in which I was like, come on, Annette, like, get to the point of the story so that I can
Is this important?
I want to know who's singing or what's behind the curtain. Like, you're not telling me. And it was one of those things that when I look back, I was like, wow, that's actually like a mini story within a story. And I had a real definite emotional reaction of and tension building, and yeah, almost a kind of fear that paralleled the heroines rereading these servant narratives. It's like, oh, this is a buildup. This is really interesting. You can debate about how conscious the authors were in being like, oh, we're going to be so meta. We're going to include a servant narrative about, it's going to be a mini Gothic tale. You can debate about how conscious they were of that, but from Shakespeare and before, servants have been such important characters for making sure information is there, for structuring a world in which social roles are defined, and in which social roles are defined, but also in which moral roles are defined, and also in which moral fault lines and hypocrisies are exposed. You can't really fool a servant in some of the ways. Servants in the Gothic particularly get a very bad rap. Voltaire, when he was criticizing Shakespeare, and by extension Walpole later, very, very much objected to the idea that you would have servants on the same stage as aristocrats, that you would have the lower class and the upper class intermingling. And in many Gothic stories, they are dismissed as stupid or not to the point, just of having no kind of value in terms of what their opinions are. But that's a trick, that's a trap. And when you go back and you reread it, it's like, oh, they get it. Yeah. They may not show it, and you may have to read deeper, but it's very difficult to fool a servant the way many of the heroines are fooled, and almost all of the heroes are fooled. Let's be fair. And that there is something, they do have a very conscious idea of social roles, of moral roles, of the hypocrisies of their employers, of the practical things that you need to do to survive in the world that a lot of the heroines just don't seem to notice. So that's on one level, that within the text they are very knowledgeable about that, and that's who you ask. But on another level, that they also do function as authorial metonyms. They're stand-ins for Walpole and Radcliffe, and they say the things that we're all kind of thinking of, like, rolling your eyes about some of the heroines' worser peccadilloes, or just being like, okay, you gotta move now, you gotta run, don't faint, run.
And they get to undercut that tension, don't they? Like in Otranto, when the maid is like, that guy's hot. Like, my lady, that dude's super hot, and she's like, I could never say such a thing.
No. Although you're right, but I could never. I mean, even in Walpole, Castle of Otranto, at one point the servant says, better to be married to somebody than nobody at all, and it's like, you shouldn't say it, but this instance, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's taking the high romance of the Gothic and being like, yeah, but is it really? Yeah. Wouldn't it be better to be a little bit more practical about that? And isn't the high romance kind of thing that's getting you into trouble in the first place? And and they do stand up to the villains of the piece. Mm-hmm. I mean, servants get away with saying talking all kinds of smack. And that is an academic term you can definitely use.
You can quote that in your essays.
Yes.
If you're an
Servants talk
undergrad
all
and you're
kinds of
watching
smack.
this, Dr.
No,
Kathleen Hudson says
make that a
servants can
t-shirt.
talk all kinds of smack.
I'll call them, yeah. Well, but they do. They say things to all these horrific Gothic villains that no one else would ever be able to get away with. And they sort of do get away with it a little bit because they're like, oh, I'm just a servant. Don't listen to what I say, but also you're a moron and evil and, you know, a jerk, and you shouldn't do that. But also, yes, too, that I think they do start to function after a while as a stand-in for an audience and an author who are conscious of how a Gothic story, how a spooky story is told. Claremont by Regina Marie Roche, or is it Marie?
So we had this in our Claremont episode for Archive Deep Dive, where I was like, there's about 4 different ways to potentially pronounce this person's name.
Yes.
I think we've gone with Regina Maria Roche.
Roche, okay, all right.
Based on like, she's Irish and it's the late 18th century. So it's
I have been saying
Mariah,
Roche,
and I think it's Roche.
Because I basically saw it and I was like, the candy, Roche. She's
a Ferrero.
Yeah, Ferrero Rocher. And I don't think that was actually correct. And but that's you know.
And that's so great logic. I love
it. I buy it.
I was like, I only have seen this on a candy, so I am going to do it that way. But yes, Roche's Claremont is an excellent example of this, in which it is literally a dark and stormy night, and the heroine is having just a really rough time, and she can't sleep. So,
and someone just got straight up stabbed in a chapel.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, but yeah, we're not talking about the stabbing. Yes, no, so yes, exactly. It's a fascinating, again, it's servants, there are male and female servants in the Gothic, but I do find that it does come down to gender lines quite often. And it is a fascinating kind of commentary on that there is violence often disproportionately inflicted against women in the Gothic, and that where the heroines then find some sense of stability is in interactions with a more vulnerable class.
Yeah.
And often interactions with a more vulnerable class and women in that class. And that in this instance, it's very pointed that she's having 10 different kinds of a mental breakdown, rightly so, because she is in an extraordinarily dangerous universe. And yeah, it's a dark and stormy night. They're in a dark and creepy castle. So what these 2 servants who are looking after her do is light a fire, make some toast and hot cocoa, and start telling ghost stories. And the idea that there is a redemptive, very human, almost soothing quality to listening to ghost stories. And then to spread that out, and it's like, and you are also reading a ghost story. You are also, you the reader is reading a Gothic novel. And within that too, look at the redemptive power of these very highly metaphorical and telling and interesting stories that are being shared by 3 of the most vulnerable people, according to class, according to politics, according to gender, that is being shared by these 3 people as a way of essentially reaffirming their own identities and keeping the heroine's mind and emotional state safe. And yes, we're in a world where violence is disproportionately inflicted upon women, but we can also then take control of the narrative a little bit and make it ours and tell stories about women escaping and women surviving, which is one of the things I like about modern horror too, which is, you know, it's why do you watch all these horror movies? It's like, well, it's one of the genres where
the women win.
Where the women win, yes, where women survive, and it doesn't try to sugarcoat the fact that the world is very dangerous for women. Mm-hmm. It's not going to whitewash that, but it's also one of the situations where women can and do survive. consistently.
That actually brings us really nicely to Dr. Hannah Moss, because Hannah's research, and so we wanted you guys on together, not just because we love you, and this is pure nepotism, but also because your research interlinks and overlaps really, really nicely. So Hannah, would you like to tell us a little bit about your research?
Hello, yes, thank you for inviting me. It's great to follow on from Kathleen and what she was saying about women's authorship, and that community of influence really feeds in nicely to my research on women artists in the novel, because that's basically what my argument is in my thesis, is that it is a whole female community of influence we find going through, that you'll find the same famous paintings being referred to, or the same artists, or similar incidents will have a chain through that we find. Sort of one example is sort of Anne Radcliffe having her heroine Eleanor Rosalba in The Italian. It's one of my favourites, painting copies, and that sort of idea of the copyist heroine pops up again in Mary Shelley. So that those links between Radcliffe and Shelley is something that's really at the heart of my thesis, and seeing how Gothic writers sort of read and respond to one another, and sort of taking back and like responding to that idea that the Gothic is this sort of imitative genre that people sort of mock for reusing the same tropes and ideas. And I want to sort of reclaim the value in that, and say actually often women writers are sort of picking up on these ideas as a means to make a comment, and but might twist them in a slightly different way or sort of reformulate them, but it's all there purposefully to make a point. It's not necessarily I've not come up with an idea, I'll just copy what this person's done before me. So again, similar to Kathleen, I have a date range from 1760 to 1830, so it's quite a wide span, starting from, I don't just work on the Gothic, but the Gothic was my starting point. So I go from utopian novels in the 1760s right through to sort of more romantic novels, and the Brontes come in as an epilogue. So there's quite a lot in there. But my starting point basically was during my MA. I took a module called The Rise of the Gothic at the University of Sheffield, which is much recommended. And basically every novel we read had an artist in some form or other, some sort of engagement with art, whether it's the painting of a portrait, somebody stopping to sketch a landscape, or secretly sketching someone they fancy and hiding it away, hoping no one will ever find it. And of course they do. But if someone can tell me a Gothic novel where there isn't art or an artist at some point, I'd like to know, because it seems to be everywhere. But the thing with women artists was no one was talking about it. There's a great book by Camilla Elliott that I was drawn to on portraiture in the Gothic, which I'd recommend, but that's specifically focused on the role of sort of portraits as objects. So in terms of the Gothic heroines themselves turning to art, it was often overlooked as just an accomplishment, that it's this form of education that's quite light, decided to make you look busy and attractive, whether you're sort of sat demurely sketching or playing the harp, you're doing something ladylike that's going to attract a husband, essentially. And a lot of women's art is sort of lumped together as accomplishment, but really there's a lot more going on, but no one was talking about it. I think a lot of the studies I was finding started with Germaine de Stael's novel Corinne, and Corinne is sort of taken as the first woman artist in a novel, because she self-identifies as an artist. Basically, she positions herself as sort of an inheritor of Petrarch. She's crowned at the capital in Rome. She's the equivalent of sort of a poet laureate. She can be sort of wheeled out to spout this improvised poetry on an occasion, but she sort of sings and dances and acts as well. She's a real all-rounder, and sees herself as something different and special. And because of that self-belief and self-characterization, and everyone buying into her as fulfilling this role of an artist, she sort of ticks the box as the first woman artist. And a lot of studies take that as a starting point and then look at how other writers have responded to that take. So you're sort of missing a whole tradition prior to that of what women artists are doing. And it's a period in the 18th century where you've got women artists working. People like Angelica Kauffman was one of the founding members of the Royal Academy, and Maria Cosway, the sculptor Anne Seymour Damer, who's famously Horace Walpole's ward. So you've got a nice link there to the Gothic tradition. And so I found it was getting overlooked. So that was my starting point to really look at what the role is of women artists in the 18th century novel, because often it can be a profession, an alternative route for women. Like I mentioned, Eleanor Rosalba. One of the first things we learn about her is that she sells her embroidery via the local convent. So she's got that sort of anonymous veil over her work, but it's really highly valued and seen as really intricate and special work. And then what the majority of the time in my thesis that I talk about Eleanor, I'm thinking about the copies that she draws from the excavations at Herculaneum, which is almost a kind of blink and you miss it episode if you don't know what you're looking for. You can easily think, oh, she's copied something. These were really famous excavations that were getting lots of attention. It's quite fashionable to decorate your home in that neoclassical style based on things that are coming up out of the ground. But what I found when I was sort of looking more into it is that it was really hard to paint copies of the excavations. The state were really controlling. This is in the episode where one lady tourist went along with her sketchbook and the guards escorted her out. It was a banned activity. Someone else tried to get in through a window and sort of fell flat on their face. Like an attempt to sort of break in.
Breaking into her.
Yeah, break an entry of these 18th century ladies who just want to make a nice sketch. Because they really wanted to control the aesthetic. And they hired the most sort of skilled copyists and draftsmen to produce these exact drawings, so they could market a whole series of volumes of prints to sell as, oh, this is the style of Pompeii and Herculaneum, this is your source book for it is to encourage copying, but to control how it was being. So
very like taste making.
Very much so. So you could easily sort of look over Eleanor, drawing copies. It's something that's quite almost derided in a lot of aesthetic works during the 18th century. Sort of Joshua Reynolds, during his presidency of the Royal Academy, talked a lot about it just being the starting point for the training of artists. It was sort of mechanic and didn't take any imagination at all, no creativity. It was just something you did in your first few classes and sort of swept away, when really there are a lot of artists.
Joshua Reynolds being like, there's no creativity or uniqueness. Joshua Reynolds, the man who painted like the same portrait like 50 times.
It's really ironic that
like a different face on it.
So yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on, but sort of trying to gatekeep as well. If you're saying that women, they can't go to sort of live drawing classes, can't draw from nude models, you can just stay at home and paint from your family's art collection. It's sort of putting a sort of limit around it, saying, oh, this is something you can do, you're not progressing further. It's sort of that professional demarcation of copy as amateur and this creative genius emerging that we sort of see in the Romantic period as this sort of male artist figure who's divinely inspired, and it's sort of you getting that cut off there. But really, if we're looking in depth at a character like Eleanor, you can see that there is skill and value in the copy, and it's a way that Vivaldi recognises her hand. He sees some of her work in progress and realises that the family art collection has some of her work as well. So it is sort of transcending the domestic arena to enter these sort of prestigious, sort of aristocratic art collections that are kind of quite highly valued, if it's sort of anonymously done.
Yeah, and you two, like, I think that's, where you guys kind of intersect and overlap a lot, because you're both thinking about this boundary between class and gender, but also between kind of like merit and worth and professionalism, because we're at that turning point where you know, we're going to move, you know, when you move into the 19th century, you get a lot of governess novels, you get a lot of teacher novels, you get a lot of, you know, women taking over fathers' businesses, but you don't have that in the late 18th century. You have your Emmas and your Clarissas, who are, you know, at different ends of the spectrum, but are allowed to be, you know, the mistresses of their houses and to have independent fortune. Of course, Clarissa's is slightly more traumatic and tragic, but we don't have that. And I think, you know, you're both working in those areas where it's like, well, shocker, women had to work in the 1700s. Like, women's professions weren't just invented in like 1830. So I think it's really great. Like, I think that's one area that you two really kind of like overlap on. And yeah, there isn't like, there's just not, we don't think about it enough, I think, as like as a discipline.
Yeah, I don't think we do. I think there's sort of snippets in novels that are sort of often overlooked, and I think often it's to convey the difficulty that women face in having a career. And there's a nice reciprocity between the woman writer is sort of often the woman artist talking about her as a means to demonstrate their own struggle in kind of entering this professional public sphere, and that it is sort of could be down to their reputation when they're sort of speaking out doing something that they're not love. So yeah, there's lots of sort of tentative attempts to become a professional artist that are often like sort of thwarted. I can think of The Victim of Prejudice is one where she becomes a botanical artist, and her employer takes the opportunity to sort of sexually abuse her or attempt to, as he sees her as sort of an available commodity, I suppose.
Yes, because having a job meant that you were a sexual object. And I say that flippantly, but like that's kind of true if you're like an opera singer or an actress or an artist, or like, I don't know if like, sometimes I forget that we study a very niche thing and stuff that we think is common knowledge is not common knowledge. But the whole thing about hat shops, like hat shops were fronts essentially for brothels. And you know, you maybe get this impression that it was just a front, but no, they made hats, they sell hats, you had to make hats and then also take customers at nighttime. Like, you know, it's not this kind of separate, you know, it's not like, oh, the hat shop, like it's just, that's what hat shops do. Like they're different to milliners, like they're different to, and there's always that thing, isn't it, like, oh, that's different to the tailor, that's different to these things that are like legitimate organizations and enterprises. These ones are shady because they employ women. Because I remember like reading a biography and they were like, oh, his sister would have had to have like started working at a hat shop, and obviously like he couldn't let that happen. And I remember being like, I mean, I know like, what's so bad about making hats? And then I looked it up and was like, oh god, okay, never mind. Like,
yeah, because even if it is a legitimate enterprise, the assumption is that if you're selling an object, selling artwork, it's just sort of tantamount to selling yourself. It is that you're embodied by your work.
Yeah, and I guess servant, that's kind of what the stereotype of the servant, isn't it? Like, by being a servant, you are a servant, and that is your entire identity.
You don't then leave. No, you don't then leave that. And I do think it is, it's an interesting one too, because for servants, for the middle class heroine to then have any kind of stability by the end of the book, the servants need to basically approve of her. They protect her throughout the whole story, and then when they say it's okay for her to settle down, then she's allowed to settle down. And it is one of those things where I think, especially with an emerging middle class, and a middle class where work is not okay, but it's more of a thing. And you do get heroines who are artists, and you do get heroines that I think are expressions of the frustrations of female authors who were enormously present in print culture, not just as authors, but also as just from start to finish in a publication.
Yeah,
are present. and that are marginalized very much so in history. I think, yes, no, I do think that the interactions and that idea of work is a lot of the frustrations that female authors have. And I do love that too, you mentioned that professional versus amateur thing, which is finding that I read an interesting statistic when I was working on the edited collection, another plug, that many there were many women writers, but many of them also only published once.
Yeah.
And that it was just not, they couldn't sustain it, but I'm like, even if you publish once, you still participated in that culture. You still contributed to that conversation. Hannah Hudson has published an excellent.
Is that you guys' love child?
Yes. No relation.
The best bits of both of us.
Yes, the perfect combination. She has published an excellent thing about reviews and you can see the reviewers trying to guess if it's not obvious if it's a man or a woman, and overwhelmingly it's a great amateur work if it's a woman, and it doesn't matter how good the book is. This is something she did because she, again, like the art, this is something she did in a drawing room, which makes it not real art in that kind of sense. Yeah. And it is an interesting, yes, I do love I do think that the art stuff within the novels does very much parallel the frustrations and just feelings that the female authors are having of like, I'm really working on this. It is work. Please just don't, but to be labeled as an amateur is such a harsh thing in a criticism.
It is a really difficult divide to sort of settle on as well, whether you're sort of using it as skill level or money for earning a living, because sort of often you think of aristocratic women having a bit more freedom to pursue arts or literature, sort of like I mentioned Anne Seymour Dame as a key example, but not needing to charge for it, where you can gift it to a friend, or here I've sculpted a bust of you, here have this, I don't need to earn a living from this.
It's that tortured artist thing, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
if you don't have to ask for money for it, then it's art. Like
poor Radcliffe, who didn't need to work necessarily, and then who was paid so much, and they still had to make her a tortured artist, where to this day we're like, oh, was she in an unhappy marriage? Was she secretly crazy? I'll never forget that scene from Becoming Jane.
Oh my god.
Which I knew if I said it would
immediately trigger a reaction
from Lauren. Where she's only in it for 2 seconds, but she's still like this tortured. You just cannot believe.
She keeps like looking to the side in the whole scene, like she's seeing something that's not there.
Like,
I think she's sort of played as being kind of mentally tortured.
Yeah.
I hate that scene. I hate that film for so many reasons.
That's a recent, thing. But I think it's still the same thing, which is, well, she wrote all this stuff, so there must have been something wrong with her.
Yeah.
Then and now, and I can't. It was another. There was a quote, I've forgotten who said it, but it was classifying Gothic as basically that genre which every young girl who, when she reads it, thinks she can then write it. So that Gothic
because
is like
we can.
But
what, like it's hard?
Yeah, it's hard. But that's the thing too, which is, oh, she read it, so that means that she can write it.
Yeah.
Or she thinks she can write it. And I'm like, I think actually the underlying idea there, which is very interesting, is she read it and she immediately connected to a story about a woman who was locked in an attic by some nightmare man and then put in a forced marriage, and then she has to run to a convent and like, I think it's as much that these women are dismissed as being amateurs, amateur artists and amateur writers, but the fact that they have connected so emotionally with these things, and yes, and too with the aesthetic, that they are tastemakers, that they find something of value in romantic scenes or neoclassical scenes or whatever it is that they're drawing. is very suggestive and kind of almost nullifies the whole "are you an amateur, or are you a professional" thing.
Well,
You're immediately making me think of the Mary Shelley film.
Oh God, yes.
Because, the introduction to that basically has Elle Fanning sat in the grave, the traditional scene of Mary Shelley sat at her mother's graveside reading. She's reading The Castle of Wolfenbach at the same time she's really scribbling notes to a ghost story that she's sort of supposedly been sort of inspired to write based on Eliza Parsons' work. And basically the opening of the film just sets about this idea that the sort of early women's Gothic is this rubbish that we can cast onto the fire, as sort of her father finds her notebook and sort of sits her down in his study to sort of say, well, why are you writing something imitating somebody else? You need to go away to Scotland and find your own voice, and sort of puts the book on the fire, and sort of there's this severing of sort of her childhood imagination and sort of this really sort of in like you say, having this emotional inspirational connection with the Gothic. It's this idea that she's got to cast that completely aside, which I don't believe in. I think we sort of find those threads come through, and she might sort of revolutionize them, but they're not cast away, they're just sort of reworked.
There's so much. I mean, Shelley writes a novel about a condottiere, and the whole of Mysteries of Udolpho is about a man, a tyrant who wants to be a condottiere, and you're telling me that Mary Shelley was like, no more of this nonsense.
I was gonna say, this is given how deeply Percy Shelley plagiarized significant Gothic novels, this is deeply ironic.
Hey, her husband literally plagiarized, like, I'm gonna call this Wolfenstein. It's definitely not a copy. I'm gonna write Saint Irvine, which is definitely not a direct copy of my father-in-law's novel.
It's fanfic of your dad's really popular novel, Mary. But let's not dwell on that.
No.
It's fine.
Well, and
okay,
yes,
well,
that originality emerged. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, but that originality emerged as this thing that you were supposed to get. But even now, we're still kind of now, again, I think with fan fiction debating, okay, but is originality really the be all and end all for this, or is it engagement and advancement? Yeah. Which is more what?
No, it's not the be all and end all.
No, it's not.
Okay, now we've had the serious conversations about things like research and academia and social justice. Let's play Kiss, Marry, Kill. Mary, take it away.
I'm so excited to play this game with you both. So for anyone that isn't familiar with the game before, basically I'm going to give Kathleen, Hannah, and Lauren 3 options from a specific Gothic kind of theme. 3 people, and you have to choose which one you want to marry, which one you want to kiss, and which one you want to kill. So are you ready?
Yeah, and just to kind of like be clear with the rules that don't exist. I have gotten out of this being like, I will kill this person and then revive them because that's able to do in universe. But you do have to choose like one for each. And we do request reasonings.
Yeah, I was going to say, I assume Gothic rules count, which is that no one ever actually dies. In an anything.
They die. There was one that we played and I killed Arthur from Dracula and he's dead.
He's dead.
Oh, good. Well, that's
we both ran off.
Fair. No one's reviving Arthur.
Mary and I did make ourselves look massive. Like, I think I was like, "Oh, marry Arthur because he's rich," but then I'll like have an affair with Quincy.
I was gonna say, can I marry and then kill?
Okay, and we can discuss this in the reasonings. But I think we should dive in.
Yeah, let's go.
So I have prepared three rounds of this game specifically with you both in mind. So I hope you enjoy these. So first up, we have Gothic Servants. What? Yeah. I wonder why. So your options are Annette from the Mysteries of Udolpho, Theodore from The Monk, and Justine from Frankenstein. So actually, I would normally give a little description of each of these 3, but actually, Kathleen, I feel like you could give us
I could probably do
give
that.
us a line about each of them.
All right. So yes, Annette is Mysteries of Udolpho. She is Emily St. Aubert's maidservant. She is one who, again, in many ways, Annette, I think, is like the epitomous Gothic servant, because she is so goofy in many ways. Like she is genuinely like a candle flickers, she's on the ceiling like, oh god, the ghost. But she also like does many more stories than almost any other thing. And she is very, very positive in that she sticks with Emily through thick and thin, and kind of does save her life a little bit. Theodore, yes, from the monk, who is Don Raymond's servant, who is extraordinarily quick and clever, and does, I think, very, very much embody like the worldly servant who knows exactly what is going on at any given time. Also good musician.
That's why I included him.
Yes, why? Yes, see, exactly. Well, of all the men in the monk, he's probably the least atrocious. So that there's that as well.
He's like the only one that's not super shitty.
Pretty much. And yeah, which and given that it's the monk, there's a lot of competition there for most shitty. So yes. And Justine is yes, servant to the Frankenstein family, who unfortunately is pretty quickly as a victim of she's accused of the murder of Victor's younger brother, William, thank you. Sorry, I was like, Henry, I know that's not right.
That's his friend.
Yes. Yeah. But Henry also dies. Everyone dies. So, you know,
apart from Ernest.
Talk about fridging. Yes, she's accused of the murder of William and is executed wrongfully for the murder that the creature committed. So yes. Okay. Good. Well, I guess I'll go with
you go first.
Okay. Well,
I feel like you're gonna have the most in-depth reasoning.
Yes. Kiss Annette. I don't think I want to be married to her because she is kind of crazy all over the place. But she is also just lovely in general. And again, I do love, one of my favorite scenes from Udolpho is after Emily has sort of had a severe mental breakdown and is imploding upon herself. Annette, even though she's really super terrified to be basically in the castle alone, stays with Emily, and it says, you know, stuck with her throughout the night. Yeah, Annette, I think, would be annoying in a long-term relationship, but she's also just this lovely French person who is very, you know, so yeah, kiss Annette, because Annette's a kissable person. Probably couldn't sustain that for very long, but yeah. Marry Theodore. Again, musician, gotta love it. Extraordinarily clever, very well read. Has a lot of you know, he writes his own poetry, which again is usually a huge red flag when a guy plays a guitar and writes his own poetry. Yeah, there's a lot of red flags happening here, but
you have to think about it in the context of the monk, though, where the other red flags are so freaking huge.
Yes. I mean, yeah. Compared
it's like a massive banner.
I'm going to drug you and put you in a crypt so that I can molest you later. Theodore being basically a frat boy is not the worst thing. Being that guy in your first year creative writing class is what Theodore is kind of. But he carries it very well. He's very well educated for a servant. He's a bit on the younger side, but you know, that's fine. He is very well educated. He's very clever. I think you could have a good long-term relationship with him because he would sustain that. He's got a good head on his shoulders. So marry Theodore. I hate to kill Justine, but the thing with Justine is she never really gets a chance to be a character.
Yeah, she's kind of 2D.
Yeah. And she is, I mean, in a way, Justine is a character who is designed to be killed off. And when you actually do hear from her, it's when she's in prison, and you know, she is basically killed as an indictment of the justice system. I mean, Shelley introduces her to be like, and this is what counts for justice in this system. And oh yeah, Justine is a servant, but she's basically a member of the family, except that then the family basically essentially abandons her, you know, so there's that. So I would kill Justine, but I would also pull a Kenneth Branagh perhaps and bring her back as half of a Bride of Frankenstein creature. In a very kind of meta feminist commentary, if anyone saw Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the Kenneth Branagh adaptation, which has its flaws, God help us, not the least of which is Robert De Niro as the monster, probably. Although he does an all right job. But it was a very interesting moment when they sort of stick Elizabeth's head on Justine's body and then bring the whole thing back to life, and then she experiences such dysmorphia that she destroys herself and everyone else around her. So yeah, I gotta kill Justine because she is sort of just one of those characters that's designed to be killed. But I think I could see my way clear to committing an abomination against God and nature by bringing her back to life as a one half of a Frankenstein monster.
Yeah, that tracks. That tracks. I mean, I always wonder, is the reason that Justine is a 2D character because Victor is such a shithead of a narrator that he doesn't think to mention this person who Elizabeth's like, she's basically my sister, I've grown up alongside her, and Victor's like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention her until now. And then I just let her die.
And it's interesting too that between the 1818 version and the later 1831 version, she gets a lot more to say. In the 1818 version, she is just sort of this quiet but very sharp indictment of the justice system. In the 1831 version, she has this much longer speech about how she has essentially resigned herself to the will of God, which ironically, she's saying more, but she's also kind of giving everyone a pass, so it's less effective. Like she's like, oh yes, this is a massive injustice, but because I've resigned myself to the will of God, it's actually all right in a way.
Providence.
Providence, the will of Providence.
The novel's favorite scapegoat.
yes, and yeah, you're absolutely right, which is Victor has no like concern for Justine, so he wouldn't have anything to say about her. If it was from Elizabeth's perspective, there would be a lot on Justine because they are definitely Gothic doubles in every possible way.
Completely. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hannah, you go next and then I'll go last.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot to think about, some good justification from Dr. Kathleen. So carrying on about Justine, I was rewatching Mary Shelley's Frankenstein only a few weeks ago and was reminded how brutal the lynching of Justine scene is. It is really awful. It is sort of mob rule sort of takes over and sort of she's sort of thrown over a wall, and it's really horrible. And so I want a better fate for Justine. So she's going to be my choice of wife, because I think she should be drawn into a family. She shouldn't be forgotten about by idiots like Victor, who should be the one that's killed if we had it.
This
had
is why you're the best of us, Hannah.
It'd be a lovely wedding. Right, so Justine would be my choice to marry for that reason. And then Annette is lovely. I totally agree with Kathleen, but she does talk a lot. She doesn't shut up. Sometimes you might just want a little bit of peace and quiet. So that she's going to be my choice to kiss, but then I'll just be like a little bit of silence to shut her up for a minute. Totally justifiable reason, but I do love the scene where at Tudolfo, when they first go to the chamber with the famous veiled portrait, and Annette's heard what it is, but can't even bring herself to talk about it. So she's just like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, she just walks out.
Just rouse all the suspicions and intrigue, and
she's so
not bothered to divulge what the story is.
She's like, no, I'm done. You know what? No, not for me. I'm leaving. Bye. Taking my choice and going. A lot of words, no content to actually say. Oh, I've heard what this is. You don't want to see it. Let me tell you and describe it, and let's leave. No, just no. Let's go out of here. That sort of fuels this whole 700-page mystery of what is behind there. So when Emily goes back, she has to go on her own, and that's
pretty scary in a dark castle. You don't know your way around, just on your own with a candle, and worried you're going to bump into some ruffian along the way, if not a ghost. So she abandons Emily to go on her own and doesn't tell her what it is in the first place. So yeah, she's not made it to wife material for keeping those secrets to herself. She could have saved a lot of trouble, all the fainting, and yeah.
2 sentences.
So that leaves Theodore to be killed, which is no bad thing when I don't want someone to read poetry and sing. So we can like smash the guitar over his head, I think, and say, yeah, shut up. It's a bit harsh because, like I say, he's not a bad one, especially within the context of them all. But he is the one that's meeting the grisly end, I'm afraid. So
we've all been there. We've all been there with a guy who keeps writing you songs or poetry and just won't leave you alone. Like, I'm sure we've all had that.
I think we're all gonna start having PTSD reactions if you say that. Like, all 4 of us then were like,
oh God. But yes, good reasonings. I mean, I like your reasonings, Kathleen, and also Hannah, your reasonings also make total sense. So Lauren, do you have any different reasonings? Different selection?
You two have come on the show and been like, here's my very well thought out and compassionate reasons, and I'm usually like, this one's hot, this one's rich, this one's got a house.
Oh, don't worry. Get ready for round 2. Get ready for round 2.
We rejected Theodore because he's basically a soft boy TM.
Oh no, yeah, he is. He is. Everyone, if you're not aware of the Instagram account, Beam Me Up Soft Boy with an I, you need to follow that account.
Theodore listens to Tame Impala. Pass it off.
And tells you it's a concept, not a band. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, in that case, I am going to go with the same as Hannah, because
same reasonings as well.
No, I don't really want to live with Justine because she's very religious, at least in 1831. True. But I would, like, do that thing, that thing that like the wandering Gothic heroes do, like the chivalric knight type, where they're like, I will set you up, so I'll like marry her, so, and then I'll pretend to die.
You're gonna have a side piece, aren't you?
No, I'm just gonna
like beard.
Yes, I'll be the beard, basically. That thing that they do where they're like, oh yeah, here's a house, and like, it's totally fine, and then they just never come back, like, and the inexplicably the woman's like, this is fine. I would do that for Justine, so that she doesn't.
That inexplicable when the alternative is guy who plays guitar and reads poetry to you. I would also like just a house and no man.
True. I take it back. Yeah, I take it back. I would kiss Annette because, again, she's lots of fun. Like, also, I feel like she's the person that you date when you're like an undergrad, who like gets you into some dodgy situations, but is also very good at getting you out of them. But you don't necessarily want to stay on that path for the rest of your life. And also, Theodore is, the worst of the Theodores, apart from the one in Midnight Bell, who is like a spoiled, rapey weirdo. But he's not Theodore from Romance of the Forest, therefore he must die. True. There can only be one true Theodore.
There can only be one.
It's a Highlander situation, but with Theodores, Gothic Theodores, of which there are many. We could write a whole book just about the different Theodores in like the early Gothic.
Graph. Theodore Graph.
So yeah, there's my reasons.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting. Yeah. Cool.
Very good.
I like how you had like completely different reasonings to Hannah, but the same selection. It was really interesting. Okay, ready for round 2?
Yes.
So this one, I don't know. We'll see how you go. I've called this Gothic Romantics, and Hannah, this one is for you.
Oh gosh.
And there was 2 potential versions of this, and I showed them to Lauren, and Lauren said we should go with this one.
Right. So I'm ready.
I'll tell you a little bit about the other one in a minute, but first off, your options are Thomas Sharp from Crimson Peak, the 2015 film, and Thomas Sharp obviously played by Tom Hiddleston. Then we have Rochester from Jane Eyre, but specifically the 2011 version played by Michael Fassbender. And then we have Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights, specifically the 2009 version where he's played by Tom Hardy. And the other version of this was, I had 3 options where all the characters were played by Tom Hiddleston.
Then it kind of really wouldn't matter then, would it? It's like you get Tom Hiddleston, whichever.
No matter what. Yeah.
You're tough.
We
You're
decided
really tough.
it's too easy. Like, this one's harder.
But yeah, so I don't
bet you put
know.
Tom's.
So do you want to kind of give a little explanation about these characters? Just, you know, little one-line description: Thomas Sharp, Crimson Peak; Rochester, Jane Eyre; Heathcliff, Wuthering Heights, and then maybe talk us through which one you would marry, which one you would kiss, and which one you would kill.
I think I probably would find it easier than you think if I'm basing it on being true to myself and basing it on the character rather than the actor. But to start with, I'll start with Wuthering Heights. That was my favourite novel, and it was probably what drew me to the Gothic in the first place, because I've always loved Wuthering Heights. And I always remember my university flatmate, who was also studying English literature, turned to me and said, "I don't get why girls all love Wuthering Heights and love Heathcliff." And my response was, you don't have to love Heathcliff to love Wuthering Heights. He's a terrible person.
That's literally not the point.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is really not the point. So Heathcliff is a really, like, brutal is probably like the right word to describe it. If I just had to use one word only. He's driven by revenge. He comes into the novel as sort of a waif and stray that Mr. Earnshaw somehow finds in Liverpool. It's a mystery what this boy's origins are. Sort of, it's been speculation that it's sort of an illegitimate child, perhaps, but he brings along this little waif and stray boy back home to Wuthering Heights, and immediately sort of all hell breaks loose, really, because the Mr. Earnshaw's children respond badly to someone else entering the nest, particularly Hindley, but then Catherine has sort of gained this adopted brother who she falls in love with, really, but it's kind of described as sort of a really elemental love. They kind of are each other, they're so close, but it's sort of so strong a love, it sort of hurts everyone around them and ends up sort of causing lots of family drama right through the generations. So Heathcliff grows up to marry Isabella, who he's horrible to and doesn't love. He just does it to annoy Kathy because she's married Isabella's brother, and so it's just all backbiting, going around in circles. Yeah, tit for tat. He kills Isabella's dog at one point, which, if someone's going to kill a dog, that's not very nice, really. But in the version that Mary has cited, he is played by Tom Hardy. The wonderful Tom Hardy of CBeebies bedtime story.
Played very sympathetically by Tom Hardy as well. Like, yeah. Okay, what about
so then
Mr.
we have Rochester from Jane Eyre, who has spent some time in the East Indies and got married out there to a lady called Bertha, who then he subsequently locks in his attic at home, which isn't great for Bertha. And neither is it great for Jane, who, after she's fallen in love with this guy who's already married and tries to bigamously marry her. So again, a bit of an awkward situation.
Up until Jane Eyre is a lot of the terror plot of so many Gothic novels is a man who is already married trying to trap you into marriage with him, and then in Jane Eyre, the man you're in love with tries to trap you into fake marriage.
It's and especially like someone that's so sort of moral and uptight as Jane. She's not going to be like, oh yeah, it's fine, we'll all live happily together in your nice big house. But he does have a nice big house, maybe, so there's an advantage to Rochester. He's got spacious attics and lots of staff.
You get your
quite
bike
a
up
nice
there, the
illegitimate
Christmas
daughter.
decorations, your first wife.
So, Heathcliff, I should have mentioned with him, he has disappeared in the middle of things and come back with money. He's made himself. Yeah. So you've got
also
sort of
has a
rags to
French
riches story. So there,
there's a French
Lauren.
child that lives in his house that may or may not be his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rochester comes with a lot of baggage, doesn't he? Like, oh yeah, here's my maybe child and also my first wife, and but the grounds are lovely.
Yeah, lovely grounds. Yeah, around the Peak District and on your doorstep, we have some nice walks. It's nice setting.
Yeah.
And I do think like the worst person in Jane Eyre is St. John.
St. John Rivers, yeah.
Yeah. I would choose Rochester over St. John any day.
Yeah, any day.
Honest,
he's awful.
So. Yeah.
Such a nice guy, TM.
Yes.
Definitely. It's like, no, it's not good for you to come and be a missionary, my sister. You have to
You must be my wife.
Yeah. But we're not going to have like hanky panky, obviously. Like we're going to be like that kind of married couple. It's not even going to be the sexy
he's so
kind.
gross. Okay,
Yeah.
and then Thomas Sharp.
My favourite thing about Crimson Peak is when we had a Gothic reading group session at Sheffield a couple of years ago, and I had the most fun making this poster ever. I had a picture of Tom Hiddleston in his very nice costume of like 19th century black gentleman's outfit, and I captioned it, "I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream."
Hey, do you guys remember when I made the poster for Macbeth and I didn't realise that you can see the outline of Fassbender's dick? So
there's a tick for Fassbender.
We did it was so prominent. We did the film version of Macbeth for Gothic Reading Group, and I chose the bit where Fassbender's Macbeth comes out of the lake after he's seen the witches,
so to speak.
And he's like in the wet shirt, and I was like, yes, okay, I was including it because I was like, hee Fassbender in a wet shirt. What I didn't realize is that he's above the waist in the picture. Like it's like just above his knees. He's like, his clothes are sodden, and I put that picture everywhere in our department. It was on the website, it was on Twitter, and everyone thought, the thing is, I don't know what this says about me, that everyone thought I did it on purpose. And everyone was like, only you would put that picture all across campus. And I was like, it's not that bad, like he's just in a wet shirt. And then someone pointed out to me that you can very, very clearly see the outline of his penis in that picture. I put it everywhere, and Twitter crop literally was just like that portion of the picture.
Oh yeah, good old Twitter.
I think this is important information for this round of Kiss Marry Kill. Like we should all acknowledge.
We should take that into account.
We've got a great track record of making beautiful posters of all these people to say to our reading group. Look, we'll discuss all these hot men.
Tell us more about this nightmare dressed as a daydream.
Yes, so Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak is quite famously, he was inspired by Anne Radcliffe. So we were all very excited when the film came out, especially as it has Tom Hiddleston in it. And what's great about Crimson Peak is it's inspired by Anne Radcliffe, but it subverts what you're expecting. So rather than have this kind of sexy but dangerous character that you're expecting in Thomas Sharp, it's actually his sister who's sort of the evil mastermind behind it. Yeah, he's gone along with her sort of evil plans.
He's quite wet, isn't he?
He's the kind of sexy puppet that's luring these women in, and she's one of the evil mastermind.
Sign me up.
So he's got a big house, but it's crumbling down. So it's not a country house you'd want to move into. It is sinking into red clay, which is gross. So it looks like the floors are bleeding, and it leaves like footprints in the snow that look like blood, and it's this horrible red clay. He's clever because he's like invented this contraption to mine the clay so they can make some money from it. So he's got potential. He could sort of get back on top in sort of financial terms. So there's some advantages for him. But yeah, you at risk of death from his dodgy sister.
Also, I feel like you're missing out quite an important piece of the relationship between
yeah, you would also be back to like
sister.
third wheel in the relationship as well, if you don't sort of mind him having an incestuous relationship alongside your marriage, if you should you so choose marriage. So 3 fine physical specimens who have a lot of baggage, some dodgy past dealings, and questionable relationships with women and violence. So it's it's quite, it could be a difficult one. Well, it is a difficult one, isn't it? I said it was easy to start with, and now I'm not so sure.
So you've actually said it out loud.
Right, so what am I going to choose?
I think I've got it worked out.
I think I'm going to start by killing Heathcliff.
Yeah.
Because he is a horrible person. He is played well by Hardy. I do love Tom Hardy.
I think Tom Hardy was a guaranteed in.
It's a shock. The amount I love Tom Hardy is a shock that I've killed him off so fast, but it's because he's such a brilliant actor and plays Heathcliff so well, yet Heathcliff is a really terrible person and causes lots of heartache over the years. So I'm just going to just cut to the chase and kill him off. Yeah, and it's revenge for Fanny's dog. No, Isabella's dog.
Isabella's dog.
Why did I think her name was Fanny?
Because they're either called Isabella or Fanny.
Exactly, it's one or the other, but it's Isabella. Isabella's dog. Right, so that's my first one. Then it's either kiss or marry. Right, so I'm going to marry Rochester on the grounds that his house isn't falling down and he hasn't killed Bertha. So nobody's died at his hands. It's dodgy that he wants to bigamously marry, but I'll go along with the bigamy rather than incest and murder.
Bigamy, incest, murder.
Exactly.
Your actual crime.
So I'm going to pick bigamy in this case and marry Rochester, and like say Fassbender, good option. So it leaves kissing the wonderful, lovely Tom Hiddleston, aka Thomas Sharp, and hopefully that won't annoy his sister too much.
Yeah,
I can run away and not be.
You can run away to Thornfield.
Just don't drink any tea while you're there.
Yeah, drink no tea. Don't go near like the hot boiling tubs of wax. Maybe she could go into the clay and be made into some sort of weird anatomical Venus. I'm like fanficking Crimson Peak with alternative endings. We can make them into weird waxy sculptures. Yeah.
Kathleen?
Oh gosh, it's tough. It's really tough because the thing is, they're all by the end kind of equally wealthy and equally terrible and equally hot. So I'm
Tom Hiddleston is extremely poor.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's why
they only become rich because he marries Mia Wachowski.
Yeah, but see,
you would be the American
house.
Kathleen is an American heiress.
I just kind of like the house myself, you know. It also Thornfield does burn down by the end of the book. I'm just saying, Thornfield comes with a fire hazard permanently entrenched in its attic. So it's not like you get to keep the house necessarily. So, all right, here's how I think I'm gonna have to kill Heathcliff, just because he's too much. He's just too much. Like I just can't handle that much all the time.
Can you imagine how much he would text you?
So much, yeah. And really, you'd want him to pick up guitar or write poetry or something just to give him another outlet besides what he is. Yeah, I mean, Heathcliff was always, I love Wuthering Heights, the book, but it was always something that it was like exhausting by the end of it. And yeah, I can't quite forgive that he kills a dog. And he's so mean to, I mean, in a way, he is very like Rochester in that he doesn't necessarily put his wife in the attic, but the person he does marry, he's so hideous to that you just can't really forgive it. So I'm gonna kill Heathcliff. It's down to Rochester or Thomas Sharp, and I think yes, I love Jane Eyre. That was one of my favorite books growing up, and I'm very fond of the Michael Fassbender Jane Eyre. I also like Toby Stephens very much as Rochester.
Good.
That was a really good.
That was a good adaptation. I like the bit in that where when she's doing the like Jane on the moors.
Yes. Yeah. It's a tough one. I think I'd kiss Rochester.
Kathleen.
The moors. Jane. Yeah, kiss Rochester. Rochester, yeah, I'd like to keep that in a rampant sexual everything kind of way. I want to keep him there. But I do think bottom line is he's got a firebug in the attic. His house is going to burn down, and then he's going to be physically a mess after that, and probably long term not so great. So that leaves me to marry Thomas Sharp, because I think I could take Jessica Chastain in a fight. I mean,
I'll fight you, Kathleen. Get your shovel.
Get the shovel.
Yeah. Also,
doesn't she kill her with a rake?
She has like a giant,
or is it like a pickaxe or something? It's like it's some kind of like mining tool.
Full Jack Torrance there, but you know, if what's her name could beat her, then I think I could too. And you know what? If Thomas Sharp wants to get out of line, he's a sexy puppet. He's wet. I could probably manipulate him or kill him or do whatever. But I really like the aesthetic. I like the Guillermo del Toro house. I just really like that house. And I know it's falling apart, but I do. It would also be term could kill them off and take the house.
It would be pretty cool if ghosts came to like, it's gonna rain tomorrow, you need an umbrella.
Yeah, I can make friends with the ghosts, you know. They just want, that one just wanted a bath. That's nothing. Like, you can have the bathtub, it's fine. Also, I'm a horrific hoe for Tom Hiddleston, so there is that as well. So yeah, marry Thomas Sharp, kiss Rochester, kill Heathcliff is mine. Yep. With my very academic approach to breaking them down.
Yeah, well, in my professional opinion, I would kill Heathcliff, because he's a terrible human being who commits like animal abuse, spousal abuse, child abuse. Like, he's just a terrible person. I do feel some sympathy for Heathcliff, because you do get that kind of like nature over nurture thing, and like he is a sympathetic character, more so than Kathy. Like, Kathy, you're just like, who raised you? Like, and yes, that's part of the problem, but like, yeah, but I would still kill him because he does terrible things. And also then, you know, he can go and be with Kathy.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with it. I'm not getting in the middle of it. I already struggle to sleep. I cannot if she's going to be scratching at my window trying to get to my husband. Point. Like, no, thank you. Point. Not about that. I would kiss Thomas Sharp, because again, Tom Hiddleston looking fly in a cravat, who's going to say no to that? However, again,
sounds like a poem.
I'm very talented. But yeah, I don't want to get involved with that. You know, I like former mining towns, like you know, trying to get away from my working class roots. But also, you know, insane incestuous sister. Not a massive fan. Like, and also he is really wet. Like, I think I would get sick of a sexy puppet. I'd be like, oh my god, what's wrong with you? And yeah, I would marry Rochester. I would do it like when, like, you know, that scene where Jane's like, I'm leaving, and then she goes, rightfully so, leaves and goes on the moors. I'd be like, okay, let's get married. And then I would phone the local constabulary. I'd be like, yeah, hi. there's been a crime. And then he would be arrested. I would take all his wealth. I would like be like, hey Bertha, do you want to go home? Like, you know, what's the sitch? The house would then not burn down, and I would live happily in it and await other 19th century heroes to come and find me.
It's the perfect crime.
It's the perfect situation. That is
Also,
very
Adele's,
good Jane Eyre fanfic.
Yeah, Adele's quite cute. I would happily raise that child. I did once see a 3-person adaptation of Jane Eyre that traumatized me, and Adele was played by a grown woman who also played the housekeeper. Because basically one girl was Jane, and then there was a guy and a girl, and the guy played all the male roles and the girl played all the female roles.
Don't like it.
And when she was being Adele, she did this really weird, like, high-pitched French, like, fake child voice. That was really upsetting. But, you know, actual real French child Adele would probably be fine. But yeah, I would just be like, I'll take his house. I mean, if we do end up having a marital relationship, that's fine, because he looks like Michael Fassbender. And Rochester's quite smart. Like, if I had to live with one of them for the rest of my life, I feel like me and Rochester would get on. But yeah, I'm not really sold on the whole Mad Woman in the Attic thing. Also, he, like,
Are you not?
I'm not. Well, am I gonna
Did you get the
locked up
impression
there
that the
too?
rest of us were?
And also, I'm just saying, self-preservation, he might lock me up there. So, you know, I'd have to take precautions.
So you have to keep your wits about you with these people.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, I super love all of your reasonings. They're really great, and also I love how they're all really different. But we come to the final round of this game of Kiss Marry Kill, and this is what I like to think of the most serious one. You know, so I hope you will really like consider these options and you know.
Taking them all very seriously.
This is the most serious. We've had some fun. Fun is now over. Now it's time to really
Fun is
so this is you know, the round I like to think of in terms of monsters. You know, we've done a cryptid rounds before. We've done a kind of female monsters ones before. This one I'm calling Gothic entities. So again, all seriousness, Kiss, Marry, Kill. Your 3 options are Cthulhu, Pennywise, or the Babadook.
Is this where we find out that we're all more into tentacles than we will admit to in public?
Yeah, so
we've been friends a long time. If we're not already at this stage, I mean, we are sharing it with the internet, but you know.
True.
So yeah, so if you don't know who these monsters are, where have you been? They're like some of the most recognizable monsters. Even if you haven't engaged with the literature of the film, I hope that you are all at least aware on some level of these cosmic Gothic entities. Cthulhu is like he's an elder god. He's a cosmic being.
He's the beyond.
But he also is, yeah, he's very tentacled. Kind of looks a little bit like a giant octopus. Interesting. Yeah. Pennywise is also some kind of space alien cosmic entity.
Isn't Isn't it technically a spider?
Yes, technically a spider, a space spider, cosmic space spider, who can morph into your greatest fears. So can become potentially anything, but their favorite kind of look, guys, is based on a mass murdering clown. But yeah, that's where you get the whole clown kind of makeup get up for Pennywise. That just happens to be their favorite look. But again, they can be whatever you want them to be. And then the Babadook, which is, I guess, just a manifestation of your mental illness, I guess. Yeah, friendly monster that lives in your closet.
Cracking hat.
So yeah, again, with the style, you know, we've got a bit of tentacles, got a bit of clown makeup, and we got a nice hat. Okay, so those are your
choices meant to be gay icons at this point.
Yes, the
Too?
Babadook is an
Yes.
LGBT icon.
As is Pennywise.
As is
That's
Pennywise.
Pennywise.
I'm
Yes.
not too sure on Cthulhu. I think
Probably
Cthulhu
not.
still has a bit of a cosmic mystique surrounding him. Not into labels.
I think it's probably if we're taking Cthulhu as written by Lovecraft, in which case definitely a right winger, or
True.
Cthulhu as imagined by the Lovecraftian mythos, in which case, like probably very like, gender is a social construct, like but who are we to know?
Cosmic mystique.
Cosmic
Yes.
mystique.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the final round, the most serious round. Who would like to go first?
I feel like I should take the one with the
point here.
first. Okay, I can't believe that you are asking me to cheat on my husband, the Mothman. He and I are very happy together. With our interdimensional moth children. Okay. I would kill Pennywise because I really fucking hate clowns.
Yeah,
Like,
that's fair.
and I just don't think that anyone who prefers to present as a clown, I just don't think we're ever gonna click. Like, there's not gonna be any chemistry. We just disagree on a fundamental level. There's never gonna be any chemistry. Like, it doesn't matter that they're actually an interdimensional space fighter. Like, they like clowns and I don't. So it's just never good. Like, I would not swipe whichever way you swipe on Tinder. Like, and just be like, nah. And also, like, kills kids. So that's not great. Like, Pennywise is the most abhorrent of the three, I kind of guess. Yeah. And I would kiss the Babadook because the Babadook seems like a good time. Has great style. We could go to Pride together. Like, we would have some really great conversations. We agree on like a moral level, but ultimately I spend most of my life trying not to be followed around by manifestations of my mental illness. And I feel like if I turned into therapy and told my therapist I was dating the Babadook, he'd be like, "That's not what we've talked about, Lauren." So I think, I would just have to keep it casual with the Babadook. And I would marry Cthulhu because that bitch sleeps most of the time. And I would never really have to do anything. Like, I'd just be like, "Oh, okay, are you traumatizing some humans and sending them insane today? Okay, babe, I'll talk to you later, bye." Like, I could still live my life. I already have existential dread, so what is meeting Cthulhu gonna do, really? And unlike the Babadook, I don't have to see him all the time because he sleeps in Riley, so it'll be okay. And if he does turn out to be Lovecraft racist and all the rest of the awful things Lovecraft was, I'll just divorce him. It'll be fine. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Love it.
Because obviously the Mothman and I are meant to be.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There you
go. I'll go. I'm very similar to that. Yeah, I would kill Pennywise because the only thing I hate more than clowns is spiders. And I understand the potential there of he could turn into literally anything, and that's kind of cool and sexy. But yes, the fact that he chooses, then he could turn into anything, but what he chooses to do is instead turn into the worst things on the planet. Is probably a no. And it's not that Cthulhu doesn't kill people, but Pennywise specifically kills and traumatizes children, which is kind of a dick move.
Yeah, like Cthulhu is kind of like, look, if you seek me out, I'm gonna send you insane, and eventually I'll destroy the world. But you don't know when.
No, whenever.
Could be any time.
So I would definitely kill Pennywise. I would also kiss the Babadook. I'm already kind of in a long-standing relationship with my own mental illness, so familiarity is definitely there. Had great style, long fingers, terrifying mouth, but you know, whatever. That's cool. Also, he's a homebody. I feel like dating him would be very easy because he stays at home. I've broken you, haven't I?
Lauren, I can hear what Lauren's thinking. Lauren is thinking of the other version, the other title of this game. And when you said laughing,
well, consider the Babadook. Consider visuals of the Babadook.
Oh, don't worry, we're considering the Babadook.
Kathleen, this is a family friendly.
Let's just say that he is a long, tall drink of water. Yeah, and also he's like what, 7 feet tall?
Well, as everybody knows, is he over 6 foot or is he handsome? It's hard to know.
Exactly. But yeah, again, I probably wouldn't want to get any more into a long-term relationship with him than possible. And yeah, he is a homebody. Like, he lives in a basement and a bedroom and all that.
And a book.
So, and in a book. So probably like going out for dates, not going to be a sustainable long-term thing, but just as like an at-home Netflix and chill type kind of thing, then that's solid. And yeah, I'd marry Cthulhu. Again, I just feel like we click on a very fundamental level. Not with the racist stuff, but you know, all he wants to do is sleep.
Yeah,
he's basically very much a misanthrope, which I appreciate, but a misanthrope, but not super energetic about it. Like, he does want the destruction of the world, but tomorrow, like at some undefined date in the future, and I appreciate that level of laziness.
He also literally wakes up and is like, mañana.
And yeah, again, he really doesn't bother anyone unless they bother him. Like, unless they ram a boat into his home, he's like, I don't care.
He does also have a sick underwater castle.
That's true. Yes, exactly. See, you could live in the underwater castle. He can communicate with you through dreams, so you never have to like be like, oh, I'm at the grocery store. What was that thing I forgot? Just take a quick nap by the milk and be like, hey,
babe, do we have flowers? Can you just check in the cupboard?
Yes. Can you just look real quick? Hurry up!
Someone walks over to you as you're asleep. Are you all right, ma'am? You're like, yeah. Sorry, I was just communing with my husband through dreams.
Talking to Bay here.
Domestic setup. We've got the goth queen in her underwater castle.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and I mean, again, it's that thing too of, is he handsome or is he tall? I mean, he's like 50 stories tall, so obviously he's tall.
He's like bigger than I can't remember the description, but it's like they describe him in comparison to the boat, don't they?
Yes. And I know this isn't, but my Funko Pop version of Cthulhu, which was a gift from you guys to me upon my completing my PhD, he's got a very humanoid, kind of buff body, and it's a domestic servant. And I'm like, I have seen many iterations of this tentacle monster, but this one is very humanoid.
Kathleen, I was literally about to be like, I can't believe you've talked about Cthulhu, an actual tentacle monster, and not made it sexual, but you did sexualize the Babadook, and then you did it. I'm so proud.
I did it. He's tall, and in my Funko Pop version, he's not unattractive. No.
Like the Mothman, he has great buns in that Funko Pop. Like, for a Funko Pop.
Say about creatures with big tentacles. Yeah. Just I would go with that. And yeah, again, if the romance went out of our relationship or whatever, I could just leave him sleeping in his little castle under the sea, or maybe I could kick him out. He could get a bed sit, and I could be in the castle under the sea.
Or you could just chuck him out to another universe. You know,
that's true.
He's a cosmic entity. He doesn't have to stay in ours.
You could just call Nogvaroth and be like, can you please like take him, just like, you know, move back in with your mother.
And that too, interdimensional travel. I'd never have to pay for a vacation again, because we could just be like, hey, hop to some other universe, hopefully one with oxygen, and let's hang out there. So yeah, marry Cthulhu. Cthulhu would be the superior husband in that scenario.
It's true.
Amazing.
Right. I'm decided. Right. So I'm going to unsurprisingly follow suit and kill Pennywise for starters, because as we've established, clowns are terrifying, and I'm quite concerned that he would steal my red lipstick to do all the malarkey. And I don't want my makeup being messed around with to come up with abomination of a clown look like that. Yeah, hands off. And this whole thing about, yeah, he could be what you want whatever you want him to be. It'll be a nightmare. So it'll probably like turn into a snake or something instead. So
maybe we're thinking about this wrong. Maybe we should make ourselves really afraid of Tom Hiddleston.
But see, that was a slight thing I was thinking about, in that, if you could turn into the worst thing in the world, maybe that would be Heathcliff, we've established.
Yeah.
It was Tom Hardy as Heathcliff. There is a kind of situation where you can sort of buy into keeping him if he's Tom Hardy or Tom Hiddleston. But I killed off Heathcliff for killing a dog, so I can't not Pennywise for killing lots of children. So we're keeping on the morals straight and narrow.
That would be real Western feminism. Like, he killed a dog. What about all these people? He killed a dog.
I can condone racism, but I draw the line at animal abuse.
As Community once said.
Right, so now on to marriage. I am going to opt for the Babadook because he has a cool hat that I like. We've gone for the aesthetic. It'd be like, it look cute, a nice hot hat. Yeah. I think you having to live with your mental health anyway, you might hopefully try and get on. I don't know.
This is true.
So if you're always going to be followed along by kind of your other half, which we could get a bit annoying, but basically I don't want to get between Kathleen and Cthulhu because I'm really shipping that marriage.
Yeah, to be fair, Kathleen,
I'm just gonna kiss
I'm really
Cthulhu.
upset now that this is not a possible relationship. I really talked myself into
we're all buying into it. Beautiful future you've got.
Hannah's already writing the fanfic. Like,
yeah. I can be the one that leaves, so you can like swoop in. I'll be like, oh no, I don't want to live underwater.
This would be a bestseller on self-published Amazon.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
If you would like Hannah to publish some Cthulhu Kathleen fanfic, then please leave a comment below.
Also, like, in terms of ship name, Cthulhu and Kathleen, like, there's so many options there.
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, yeah. I like Cthulhu.
Yeah. Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
Or just Cthulhu, but with a K. Like, there's so many possibilities.
One of the children could be called Cthulhu with a K, and it could be like the Kardashians and all have K names.
Keeping up with the Cthulhus. It would be such a good reality.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be stepping aside for this relationship.
And we could just guest star. We could be,
I was going to say it has legs, but it has
come to see Kathleen today, and you know she's kind of upset because Cthulhu is asleep again.
They're having an argument, so she's banished into another cosmos.
And see, Hannah has chosen Kiss Cthulhu, so there's that tension there now.
Oh yeah,
you know, that love triangle.
The drama. Well, I've chosen not to kill him, so
yeah,
that's in my
favor. That would be difficult. Mary and I have discovered that about ourselves, is that, you know, we create some tensions. I think it was when we did the female Gothic one, wasn't it, that like I was like, I'd kill this person, and she was like, you'd kill my wife.
How dare you.
But we all, you know, we're all friends at the end of the day. It's fine.
We're all friends.
Yeah.
Coven sticks together.
Exactly. And I think our choices so that we support each other.
Pose before interdimensional horrors.
Yes.
Well,
before Hiddleston's.
Well, I love all your reasonings, and I'm so glad that now we have Cthulhu Kathleen Vic out there, and I hope you've enjoyed playing another Gothic edition of Kiss Marry Kill.
Brilliant.
Thank you for coming to our super serious, very academic YouTube channel. We understand if you never want to come back.
Before we go, do you want to plug anything one last time, or give a shout out to anything in particular?
Buy the books, buy our books.
Buy books.
Buy my books.
I love them.
I've published on Servants in the Gothic through University of Wales Press, and also there's an excellent women's authorship in the early Gothic that is just recently out through University of Wales Press, which is an edited collection. So it's not just me yammering, it's lots of different people yammering. with me editing. So you should check that out.
With you controlling the
With me controlling the narrative. Yeah.
You're the puppet master. It's not just Tom Hiddleston you want to control.
She's the sexy puppet master.
Yeah, yeah. And
Great.
if you want to hear me moaning about the anatomical Venus more in relation to the Mysteries of Udolpho, I am presenting for the Edinburgh Material and Visual Culture Seminar on the 29th of September.
And
And
send us the link and we'll put it below.
Yeah, we can put the link.
Yeah.
Hannah has a very exciting edited collection coming out as well next year.
So featuring Dr. Lauren Nixon, it is Jane Austen and the Arts. Lauren is contributing a great chapter on adaptations. I think it's
Television.
It's Lost in Austin.
Lost in Austin. Yeah, because I love that show. Yeah, I will be talking about the nostalgia effect in Jane Austen television programs. And Hannah is my very beautiful and gracious editor.
Oh, I'm looking forward to reading the chapter and not being like a bitchy editor crossing everything out. I know it's all going to be perfect. And I'm writing my own chapter on Sense and Sensibility and artistic heroines, and how Jane Austen responded to Jane West. So yeah, those chains of influence coming
all
through
those
again.
Janes.
But
the chains of Janes.
The chains of Janes. Yeah, maybe that should call it that.
Please do. That very serious.
Look at that in the not too distant future if you're into Jane Austen.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for being on the show. So this has been Dr. Kathleen Hudson and Dr. Hannah Moss. I'm Lauren. This is Mary. We are the Ghoul Guides. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay spooky.
Stay safe and stay spooky.